if you invite a demon in, that's a surefire way to get possessed,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So, I mean, there are ways to, I guess, seek out possession.
But is it like a vampire?
No,
Like if I invite this vampire into my house, it can come in.
it doesn't seem so.
It's like a leave a window open for a burglar kind of thing.
Welcome back to a special episode of Permission to Ask. Not quite a full-length episode, or I suppose we'll see about that, though. But an episode that has come up because of, at least my understanding, of a Bible reading that we had in church. So a special kind of one question permission to ask. I'm joined here with Lauren, who is the one who has the question for me. So Lauren, I will let you take it from here. What is your question? Let's go from there.
Would you call it a bonus episode, maybe?
You might call it
Would
a bonus
you call it like
episode.
a maybe 2-question bonus episode? Since
Yeah.
it's definitely more than one question.
All right, well then 2-question bonus episode, right? Not a special episode, a bonus episode.
So we talked about possession a little bit in the reading. Do people still get possessed? Because it's talked about in the Bible, but like, does that still happen?
Yeah, so the reading that's being referenced here is a reading out of Mark chapter 7. It's one of a number of possession accounts, as you mentioned, in the Bible, in the Gospel of Mark. This one is, honestly, as far as the exorcism accounts go, this is one of the boring ones. In fact, we actually never see the person who's possessed in this one. We hear about it, and then it's a mother asking for Jesus to kick the demon out of her daughter, and then she has a display of faith, and without even showing up, Jesus exorcises the demon from the daughter. But more to your question here, does possession still happen today? The short answer is yes, it does. But that's a bit of an unsatisfying answer. The longer answer is yes, possession still happens today. However, we need to be very careful about it.
You've sparked so many more questions.
So maybe this won't be a bonus episode. Maybe
It'll be bonus. It'll just be long.
Full length bonus. There we go. So one of the things right out the gate when we talk about possession in, let's just say, a modern context, because that's when we live, right? So in the modern context, when we think about possession, when we are maybe attempting to diagnose possession in that sense, we need to be very careful about how we do that, because one of the places that people tend to go wrong with this is putting together, confounding, mixing up mental health and possessions. So
Conflagrating?
maybe conflagrating is a word. Mushing together, I think, is the technical, right? It comes from Latin or something like that.
Sure.
I mean, the classic place that we see this is this idea that
Schizophrenia.
it's schizophrenia. Yeah, it's absolutely, yeah. That there's, you might hear this idea that there's actually no such thing as schizophrenia. Schizophrenia is just possession. That's not right. That is incorrect. That is just flat wrong. There are mental health disorders. They are very real. They are, if we're going to categorize them, we would say they're physiological in that sense. So in the same way that people get sick, people's minds can be sick as well, with disorders such as schizophrenia and other sorts of things. So we need to be very careful, because a lot of the things we know about possession, or even just in kind of colloquial understanding, can often present in ways very similar to schizophrenia or other mental diseases, disorders, or whatever the correct phraseology is there. And we want to recognize that mental disorders are very real and are not just simply just possession. Possession is something different. That is not to say that they're mutually exclusive. I mean, I guess in theory, someone who has schizophrenia can also be possessed. And like I said, there's fine lines here. One of the individuals that taught me a lot about this kind of thing, he went so far as to say, if you are suspicious that you might be interacting with a demonic possession sort of situation, assume you're not. Assume mental health first. Assume something else is going on first. One of the big dangers with possession in general is jumping to fearful conclusions. So perhaps this is also a helpful thing to understand when we think about possession, is go to like a motivation standpoint. So like, why does the devil or demons or any of this demonic sort of stuff, what is their goal? And ultimately the goal is to drive you away from God, right? That's the end goal of Satan and the demons. And one of the ways that they do that is through fear. If you're so afraid of everything around you, well, then you don't have time to believe in God, sort of thing. And you stop trusting in God to protect you. And so we want to approach any sort of suspicion of possession or demonic oppression or any of these sorts of things with an understanding, with careful consideration, perhaps is a way to put it, with a little bit of doubt, healthy doubt, right? That isn't to say that it doesn't happen. It's to say that if your first guess is possession, you need to recalibrate your diagnostics, right? So I guess because you have more questions, let's leave that one there with the simple version of the answer of yes, possession is still a thing, but don't go jump into conclusions.
So how do people get possessed? Do you have to? I watch a lot of horror movies.
Right.
Do you have to play with a Ouija
Play
board?
with a Ouija board, right?
Do you have to invite it in?
This is one of those things that's not terribly clear. So even before this, there's another question out there that kind of precedes the one you've asked. It's a question I don't have a great answer for, although some people.
But you asked it to yourself,
right?
So,
and that is whether or not Christians can be possessed in general, right? And there are reasons to go both ways with this. But right, how does a person become possessed? Do they have to invite the spirit in, or the demon in?
God, this just leads so perfectly into witches, but we don't have time.
Yeah, no, witches will be for October or something like that. In short, if you invite a demon in, that's a surefire way to get possessed, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, there are ways to, I guess, seek out possession.
But is it like a vampire?
No.
If I invite this vampire into my house, it can come in.
It doesn't seem so.
It's like a leave a window open for a burglar kind of thing.
Yeah, that's probably a better way for us to think. And again, because we don't have clear passages of scripture giving us the mechanics of how possession happens, a lot of this is guesswork, right? But
I feel like that would have been maybe helpful in the scripture.
I mean, if we're curious about these things, yes.
Which I am, but
but again, we also don't want to get so deep into this that one of the goals of the devil, if the devil can't move you with fear, obsession is another good thing, right? So becoming so focused on the devil, demons, demonic activity, and all that kind of spiritual warfare kind of stuff, pretty soon you're spending all your time thinking about Satan and not about God, and you've kind of lost the plot there.
There's a lot of Christians I know that live that life. It is all about Satan is working and Satan is doing this and Satan is doing that. And I stubbed my toe and that was Satan. Oh, yeah.
It's a real problem, honestly. I mean, I think I did a class here a couple of years ago on this kind of spiritual warfare kind of thing. And one of the things we want to do is kind of walk the fine balance of not living in utter denial of Satan and evil forces in that sort of sense, but also not being so obsessed with them that we lose track of everything, right? When you stub your toe, could it be that a demon has directed your toe into the rock? I suppose. But what's more likely is that you live in an imperfect world as an imperfect person and you stubbed your toe, right?
It just feels like it's giving him a lot more credit than...
Yeah.
If God is more powerful than the devil, which we should believe.
Yes.
Yeah. Then why why is Satan so present in your life that he can put a rock in front of your toe?
Right. And
Just
I mean,
giving him a lot of headspace.
it absolutely is. And we shouldn't be doing that, right? Luther has great advice for when you feel the attacks of Satan, whether it be temptation or whatever spiritual warfare kind of aspect it is. His instructions are to laugh at the devil because he doesn't like being laughed at, right? And because he loses his power because he's supposed to be big and scary and all of that. And now you're laughing at me, which is concerning.
No, it reminds me of in Harry Potter. I can't remember what they're called now, but you're supposed to make them funny. Why can't I remember? You know
it's in your favorite movie too. Yeah, that's pretty bad. Yeah,
but you know what I'm talking about. That's what it reminds me of.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Well, and that's a good proxy for it, right? I mean, and again, it's a fine line. We want to recognize that the devil is not all powerful, but he is still powerful, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he's not just this nothing entity, but we also don't need to be afraid of him. So it's kind of a fine line balance there, and this goes to kind of this diagnosing possession sort of thing. Is we don't want to be constantly running towards, oh, it's possession, it's possession, it's possession. Oh, I was tempted to do something wrong. I must be under spiritual oppression. It's like, well, no, not exactly. Right? I mean, you might be being tempted, but you don't. The devil doesn't need to tempt you. Your own sinful nature does that just fine.
It sure does take away the guilt when you.
Oh
say,
yeah.
Oh, I didn't feel like doing that. Satan made me do it.
Well, right, classic defense.
The devil made me
right?
do it.
The devil made me do it. Absolutely.
Okay. Next question.
Yes.
That's a little bit going back and should be a short answer. Do
Should.
we only hear about possession in one gospel? Because you said it was in Mark.
Yeah, we're in Mark. Mark has a number of them. No, I see. This is me having not been prepared as I should be.
Well, I don't need all the citations. Just do we hear it somewhere else?
Yes, it takes place in other gospels. My guess is, I mean, I'm not certain on the top of my head, but my guess is that exorcism takes place in every one of the gospels, and it happens outside of the gospels as well. Specifically, the book of Acts has a number of exorcism accounts. I can't, off the top of my head, think of an exorcism account in the Old Testament. Although you get certain things that kind of lean towards that, but aren't quite. So, like the Witch of Endor. I know, right? There's a witch in the Bible. We're about to get there in Bible in a minute.
Questions.
Different kind of witch. She summons the soul of Samuel, which is this really weird story. This is not quite a possession, but we're starting to get into that kind of territory sort of thing.
Into the October territory. I'll write this down.
Yes, that's an October question, right?
Have you had any
suspicion
possession
of
run-ins?
Possession?
Yeah.
Personally, no. That being said, I have spoken to what would probably be a surprising number of people to most people listening to this, who have told me stories of being possessed in the past or being around people who have been possessed.
And these were Lutherans?
Some of them, not all of them. I mean, when I was in seminary, I heard a number of stories of pastors interacting with this kind of thing. But seminary can be a compendium of a lot of different sources, right? So it's not surprising that I hear stories of people who are dealing with these kinds of things.
Especially the seminary you went to.
That is, she is referencing the fact that the movie The Exorcism is based on an event that at least part of it was at the seminary that I attended. So yes, that's one of the stories. But no, I've spoken to people. One of them I do remember. He I guess so. Yes, this is the closest I've gotten. I spoke to an individual once. This was before I got to Rivercliff, who told me that he was possessed. Again, I don't know whether he was or not. This was while I was still a student, so this quickly became something that I wasn't dealing with. But again, we don't jump straight to possession. And then I've heard stories from people from times in their past or people close to them, their past, that might be that might have possession related to them. But no, I would say for me personally, I've not had any sort of experience with people who have been possessed that I can confirm, right?
So my experience is growing up Catholic and watching a lot of horror movies, and also having a mother who is so terrified that you can't even mention The Exorcist, the movie, in her home.
Yeah, I got in trouble once.
Yeah. So my context is completely different, but in that context, mostly from movies, you go to a priest, and the priest has a guy he talks to, and they have like a specialist who does the exorcisms, and there's a lot of holy water, from what I understand,
yes.
which, not a Lutheran thing. What would happen now?
Yeah, so like,
as Lutherans,
let's make this assumption, right, that we've ruled out mental illness and all those sorts of things. We have an undeniable.
Oh, this person was Ouija boarding it up.
Yeah,
sure.
Case of possession, right? So what do we do? Well, in the Lutheran Church, we recognize. We start with the biblical example, right? So we look to how are exorcisms done in the Bible. And in the Gospels, it's very consistent. Jesus does the exorcisms. Jesus commands the spirits to leave, and they leave. In fact, part of the reason why we have these stories or the accounts of these miracles is to demonstrate Jesus' power over the demonic, right? That when demons just get into his presence, he doesn't even have to do anything most of the time, and they start freaking out, right? They don't like being around Jesus, and he gives them simple commands: no pea soup, no big fiery, eyes twisting around or anything like that. It's just
full owl turn.
No, none of that kind of stuff. It's, the closest you get is that there is there's one account of a possession that Jesus exorcises or heals, however you want to phrase that, where the demon keeps throwing a child into fire to try and kill him. But that doesn't happen when Jesus is around. Probably the closest you get to the demons actually doing some freaky stuff when Jesus is around is what I think is the coolest exorcism account. It's the exorcism, and it's much loved in media. It's the exorcism of the demoniac in...
Is this the Legions?
This is the Legion one, right? Where
now everyone who's possessed goes, "I am Legion."
Yeah, oh, absolutely. It's super huge in movies, right? He has like many demons inside of him, and he starts yelling and screaming at Jesus, which is, as he's approaching, trying to get him to go away, right? Which is, dramatic enough as it is, but if you actually read the context of like where he is, he's in the when this happens. I know it's exciting, right? He's living in tombs.
He's living in the tombs?
Oh yeah, that's where he lives. Well, the townspeople have kicked him out after they try tying him up a couple of times, and he's breaking out, and they put chains around him at one point. He breaks out of the chains. He's also naked, running around. He's got he cuts himself with pottery and stuff. I mean, it's a wild looking individual who's shouting at Jesus, and Jesus basically says, get out.
I am so fascinated by this man.
Like I said, it's an exciting exorcism. And what ends up happening is Jesus tells the demons, you can't be here anymore, go away. And
this is the pigs.
This is, and so
the demon, one story.
The demons are like, please don't make us leave. We don't want to leave. Let us go into this herd of pigs that are over here. And Jesus says, yeah, sure, fine. So all the demons go into the pigs and run off a cliff into the I think it's the Sea of Galilee. And then what's maybe even the craziest part of this whole story is that Jesus then sits down and has lunch with this man, basically. Who's now wearing clothes and not crazy.
Where do you get the clothes?
Probably from the disciples. It did just come on a boat with lots of stuff.
No grave robbing?
No grave robbing.
Got it.
And the townspeople come out to see Jesus, and they see that he's eating with the demoniac, and that's the thing that scares them most of all, is that he's just chilling with this guy having lunch.
To be fair, that is terrifying. You're scared of this man. He is living in a tomb. he's naked all the time, and then all of a sudden he's just chilling, being normal. That is the time to
Yeah.
be scared.
Well, there you go. Yeah.
The hidden is so much scarier.
Let's see. What was your question that led us? Oh, possession. So.
Oh, well, hold on. I had a question about that.
Oh, go ahead.
So they didn't want to leave.
Mm-hmm.
They get put in pigs.
Right.
And then they drown.
Yeah.
Is that not also leaving? Or is it they go in the pig drowns, and then they're just like loose in the air, in the vapors, ready to go in someone else's burglar window?
It's kind of unclear.
Just
you just don't get the details there. But yeah, so well, I guess what we can recognize from exorcism here is that Jesus is the one doing the exorcism. It's Jesus and it's his word, and that is the only method of exorcism. What's interesting is exorcism does take place without Jesus around, right? This happens in the book of Acts, where the disciples, and relevant for this story, is Paul does exorcisms. Now, there's reasons why he's doing exorcisms. Part of this is to prove the fact that God is working through him, that kind of stuff.
So wait, that would lead back to this man has come to you. He says he's possessed. What do you do? Are you allowed to do things? I'm
working up to that.
Okay,
I know.
Sorry.
I'm roundabout. That's the way it goes, right?
I'll cut all this out.
It's important.
Paul's doing stuff.
So
take it from
Paul
top.
does exorcisms. Well, at one point in the book of Acts, we have an account of someone who's possessed, and I think it's these 7 brothers known as the sons of Sceva, because their dad's name was Sceva, right? You gave me a look.
I liked the name Sceva.
They are Jewish exorcists, and
I don't know why we didn't consider Sceva when naming our child.
Well, let's finish the story and
Judah,
maybe we'll see.
Micah, Benjamin, Sceva.
So these brothers go to perform an exorcism, and they try and kick this demon out of this kid or this person. I don't know the age of this person. And the demon looks at him and says, because they give names, right? They say, in the name of the Jesus who Paul preaches, be out, that kind of thing. And the demon kind of looks at him and says, I know Jesus. I know Paul. Who are you? And then the possessed person beats them all up, strips them all naked, and kicks them out of the house where they have to go running home. There's a lot of naked people.
Do they get to live in a tomb?
No, they're not possessed. They're beat up and embarrassed. The idea here, where they went wrong, right, is thinking that they were the ones doing the exorcism.
Yeah, and they said, in the name of the Jesus that Paul preaches.
Right.
So leads to another quick question.
Mm-hmm.
Was Jesus a common name before
yes.
Jesus?
Oh, extremely. Yeah.
And was there ever a time when a demon was like, which Jesus?
No.
Who are you talking about?
No, the demon. In fact, this in the book of Mark, this is very clear: is that the demons know exactly who Jesus is. They know that he's the Son of God.
Feels like a little bit of a loophole that they could have exploited. What Jesus? Give me his last name.
Yeah, that they know.
Prove it to me.
They know. Right.
I know they know.
Also, people don't really have last names at that point.
Oh my god!
Like Christ is not Jesus'
Jesus
last
of
name.
Nazareth.
Yeah.
I know it's not Christ, but
Okay.
yeah. Well, when did last names become a thing?
I don't know. That's not a question about demons, though.
I'm writing it down. You got to answer that later.
No, that's
Actually, you just Google it for me.
There we
You
go.
tell me later.
So
That blew my mind.
which part?
The people don't have last names.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
of Nazareth, of course. That's never occurred to me that he doesn't have a last name.
Well, that's not what people would have called him either. They would have called
I
him
know.
Jesus Bar Joseph.
Yeah. Gofraidson. From Nordic, son. Gofraid is the father.
Okay, yeah.
Son is the...
Yeah, so it would have been Jesus, son of Joseph, and when that
I
wasn't
guess
clear
Johnson
enough,
is also John's son.
yeah, they would have just kept going up the ladder. That's why in the Bible there's sometimes like this person, son of this person, son of this person, son of this person, of the tribe of this person.
What is it, Crawford? Is it nothing?
Anyway.
Rolling back. They're naked.
Right, so these individuals are under the impression that they they are the exorcists, and that like the name of Jesus is just like this magic spell that can exorcise demons, right? We in the Lutheran Church at least recognize that's not how exorcism works. One of the things that we say when we talk about exorcism is that there is only one exorcist. There has only ever been one exorcist. The only one who can remove the power of Satan, sin, death, the devil, all that kind of stuff from a person is Jesus. That's it. And so this does look very different in the Lutheran Church versus the Catholic Church, right? In the Catholic Church, you have to find out the demon's name, and you have to go through papal approval.
Have to find out the demon's
name. It's part of the process, 100%. Lutherans don't do any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so from what I understand, in the Catholic Church, there is an exorcist, a person who does this. I mean,
there's a specialist
who does this, and there is like a set of steps
liturgies
you
and
have
things
to do. There are no steps from what you've said.
No. So the way Lutheran exorcism works, if you will, is through, I guess you might say, through liturgy. It is through, right, the name of Christ, baptismal remembrance. If baptism hasn't happened, that's part of it. And through, it's going to sound strange, but through catechesis, through teaching and discussion, proclamation, celebration of Christ and his name, that kind of thing.
I'm hearing you. And you're staying way up here in headspace. You're staying way up here in I'm teaching someone something. I'm a teacher space. I want practicalities. This man has come to you. What do you do?
We go in church. We read passages of the Bible.
Now this man is spitting at you.
Related to...
He bites you.
For what it's worth, from what I've heard, that kind of thing tends not to happen. The individual who taught me a lot about exorcism, he has first-hand accounts. It's interesting. He was working on his graduate work in church missions and went to Madagascar because the church is growing like crazy over there, and he wanted to figure out what's going on. And apparently he was in a worship service, and all of a sudden someone like 2 rows behind him just like fell on the ground, and then a whole bunch of people in robes came over and started chanting the Lord's Prayer, basically. And he kind of thought, what just happened? And it turns out they were doing an exorcism.
They're Pentecostal.
No, this is a Lutheran group.
Those people were Pentecostals. That's what they do.
This, I would say, that his description is dramatically different than what you see in Pentecostal churches. He's seen people who are reacting and then in a not insane way. And they're being prayed over. Right? Oh, I absolutely can. I just did. So, no, what exorcism looks like, I know you want something dramatic and exciting.
I just want, I guess, what you're saying to me is it's the same thing you would do with anybody that came to you with a problem. You read scripture, you talk to them, you pray over them, and maybe you baptize them. But at what point do you know that that the demon is gone, that this has worked? Or are you just like, well, anyone at any point in my church could be possessed, and this is what I'd be doing anyway, so
well,
roll on with it.
So is there this dramatic moment when the exorcism
again, no pea soup, no head spinning, but is there a moment where it is done?
So from what I've heard from people who've done this kind of thing, if there's any indication directly, it is a state of peace, mostly. So peace for the person, peace for whatever place it is, that whatever activity is happening in. The sensation, if you get one, is that of peace. That being said, what we want to recognize is that even once that occurs, that's not where word and sacrament ministry just stops, right? And then you continue in the life of Christ.
So 2 questions from that. Are you saying a place could be possessed? Kind of like a haunting? Or is there like a sense of peace in the place where that person is currently? Is that what you meant?
So I meant more the first one. I wouldn't say a place is possessed in that sense. But maybe a haunting is not a terrible way to put it. From what I have heard, there are stories where, well, I don't even know if it's a place, right? Because it's always an interaction with a person. It's not like a demon's just like waiting in a haunted house for someone to show up, right? But
Jack in the Box.
Yeah. So that's not what's going on, right? Because the demon doesn't care about the house, right? The demon cares about it. Doesn't, right? I see that look.
No, the look was, but if it wants a person, it just hides behind a corner and waits for a person.
Yeah, kind of, right?
Where else? Where else would they be?
Yeah, so they're looking for people, right? And if that means that the demonic is interacting with the environment around the person rather than a bodily possession, then that can happen, right? One thing that I haven't laid out.
It's tied to the person. It's tied to the person, even if it's responding to the home.
Right. Yes, I think that's probably a good way to put it. I think one of the things that's probably worth recognizing is in this concept of spiritual warfare, which is kind of the theological realm that we're in. We recognize that there is possession, but possession's kind of like the end of the spectrum. Before possession, we have what we describe as demonic oppression. This is things. This is more common. This is far more common. This is things like intense feelings and sensations of dread that come through. I'm going to say temptations, but not temptations like, do that bad thing. It's temptations like God doesn't love you. You're too bad a sinner. Those kinds of accusation kind of things. And like just demons producing fear in a person, right? They're not being possessed, but there's a demon who's oppressing them, right? And then above that, we just have just temptation, kind of, it's a little hokey, but the devil on your shoulder whispering in your ear. And of course, we recognize that you are tempted just because you're a sinful person as well. But there are definitely times where Satan and his minions get involved in the temptation process, right?
What are demons?
Oh, okay. This one's actually not too difficult. So demons are, the shortest answer is demons are fallen angels. So we don't know when this happened, but sometime after the seventh day of creation, when God rested, and before the fall of man, Satan had a rebellion of some kind. We're given no descriptions of it. We're just told that it happened. We're given some roundabout, kind of obscure descriptions of this war in heaven, if you will. None of them are super clear. They're all very vague. Some of them, like the one in the Old Testament, is out of Ezekiel, and Ezekiel's technically talking about like the king of Tyre and Sidon and this list of all these other kings he's giving accusations towards. And then he gets to Tyre and Sidon, and all of a sudden he's like, you were the greatest among the sons of heaven. And you're like, hold on, this doesn't sound like we're talking about a person anymore. So they're really unclear passages. Right. So we know Satan rebelled. Technically, we don't actually even know what the rebellion was about, right? So you'll often hear that Satan wanted to be God. And so that's what spurred on his rebellion. We don't actually know that. That's a guess. It's a good guess. There are reasons why it's a good guess, but we don't know that for sure.
That's not the common one anymore.
What's the common one now?
Now it's that God loved the humans more than angels in pop culture.
Oh, okay.
That is the common thread now.
And I can see why you might go there, because what's the first thing he does? He tries to destroy humans, right? But we're not told. We don't know why Satan rebelled. What we do know, or what we can guess at through these unclear passages, is that there were angels that joined Satan in his rebellion. The rough guess is a third of them, because the two references to this war, one in Ezekiel, one in the book of Revelation, both reference a third of the stars falling from the sky. And so our assumption is that that is a reference to a third of the angels fell with Satan. Now, that being said, how many angels did we start with? I don't know.
I was going to say numbers in the Bible are more referential than specific. Usually.
Sometimes they can be, and we're not even given a number, right? So we're given a fraction here. But I think the important thing to recognize is there are not as many demons as there are angels, right? And so demons then are just angels who have fallen from the state of grace and are confirmed in their rebellion. That being said, we also teach that, and we have reasons to do this, I don't have the citations, but there are not angels currently falling. The rebellion was a one-time rebellion. The demons were confirmed in their unrighteousness, and the angels are confirmed in their righteousness. They are no longer capable of falling, and those who have fallen are no longer capable of reconciliation. In fact, it's one of these kind of divine mysteries as to why God gives humans a salvation event, and he doesn't for the angels. It's like once Satan fell, that was done. But once Adam fell, there's still, God sends Jesus to save them.
I think that is all I've got about demons and exorcism. You kind of answered. You kind of.
Well, I can. This is one of those standing rules of permission to ask. Is I can't promise that the answer is going to be what you want or that it'll be satisfying. Like at some point.
Well, I just think that the ritual of it isn't a ritual. So it isn't a satisfying answer to me, who grew up in Catholic church where everything is a ritual.
There's no grimoire that has the secret words to say.
Which, no offense to Catholics, but it does feel very much like everything has a grimoire. There is a step-by-step for everything. You learn at God, I don't know, 4th grade, however old you are then, that you have to do this step-by-step confession every time you do anything wrong. There are steps, which is very comforting and also very terrifying.
Right.
And so I think that I'm searching for that comfort here, and there just isn't that. It's more fluid.
Yeah.
Which I don't love.
Sorry.
But I also don't have to do one-on-one confession anymore. So there's a give and a take.
Right. It's funny because I just recorded. I have no idea when it's going to come out in relation to this, but I just recorded the beginner's guide to confession absolution, where I talk about confession.
Probably 4 to 6 weeks after this.
Right, I know, right?
If I know my schedule.
Something for you to look forward to, listener. So, anything else on demons or exorcisms or anything like that you want to ask before we finish?
Oh, I really want to ask where ghosts come from, but we will save that, I guess. And witches. I just feel like a lot of my questions that we'll save for October relate to this whole conversation.
It's included here.
Yeah. But we'll save it.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Lauren, for joining me on Permission to Ask. This has been a fun one for me, so I'm glad that you were here, and I'm sure that all sorts of people have questions about exorcisms as they come up seemingly at random in the Bible. If you would like to be on Permission to Ask, please feel free to reach out to us. Especially, I'll put a special call out for this one. If you have questions related to spiritual warfare, or I guess the technical way to say it would be anything spooky, my guest has other questions that are spooky in theme.
Spoopy season is coming.
That's right. So we will probably have a special October Halloween spooky themed Permission to Ask. So if you have any questions related to any of that, please feel free to reach out sooner rather than later, and we will be sure to include those questions in the upcoming special episode.
There will be one. I have lots of questions about witches and ghosts, so if you do too, I'll ask them for you.
Absolutely. Well, I'm looking forward to that conversation. So I hope you've enjoyed our time together here, and I hope you too are looking forward to all the future episodes that we have planned for you. If you would like to be on Permission to Ask, please do reach out in any of those ways that you can, whether it be through email, social media, or even through the podcast here, or even just speaking to me in person. If you have a question that you'd like to submit but don't want to actually be on the podcast, we are certainly still happy to take those questions.